The transport ship slowly moved through space toward the human vessel. Inside, Chief Engineer Zixathera looked at the datapad in her 4 hands. Her blue skin had purple spots that changed color when she felt worried. Right now, those spots were getting darker. "I still do not understand why the Council sent us here," she said to her team. Her voice made a clicking sound that the translation device changed into words the humans could understand. Vectar, her assistant, moved his long neck to look at her. His species looked like tall lizards that walked on 2 legs. "The humans are new to the galaxy. The Council wants them to follow the same safety rules as everyone else. But their technology is so old," said Quinara, the youngest member of their team. She had 6 arms and skin that looked like it was made of rocks. How did they even get into space with such simple machines? Zixathera had been an engineer for 300 years. She had worked on ships from 17 different star systems. She had seen every type of reactor, every kind of power source. But the human reactor they were supposed to fix was unlike anything in the Galactic Safety Handbook. The data showed that humans used fusion reactors that ran much hotter than what was considered safe. The pressure levels were 3 times higher than normal. The safety systems were basic compared to what other species used. Yet somehow these reactors had been working for years without killing anyone. "Perhaps humans are just lucky," Vectar suggested. "No species is that lucky for that long," Zixathera replied. Their ship docked with the human vessel called Aurora's Dream. The human ship looked rough compared to the smooth, shiny ships that other species built. It had patches where repairs had been made. Some parts looked like they had been welded together with spare metal, but it was flying through space, so something about it was working right. The airlock opened with a hiss. A human male stepped through, and Zixathera felt surprised. She had read about humans, but seeing one in person was different. He was not very tall, with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore a dark blue uniform that had oil stains on it. "Welcome aboard the Aurora's Dream," the human said with a big smile. "I'm Jake Murphy, Chief Engineer. Thanks for coming all this way to help us out." Zixathera studied Jake through her scanner. Humans were made of mostly water and carbon, which seemed very weak compared to her own crystalline bone structure. This soft creature was in charge of a fusion reactor that could destroy the entire ship if something went wrong. "I am Chief Engineer Zixathera of the Centauri Engineering Guild," she said formally. "We are here to upgrade your reactor to meet galactic safety standards." Jake's smile got even bigger. "Great. We really appreciate the help. Kate, come meet our visitors." Another human approached. This one was female, with red hair tied back and green eyes that seemed very bright. She was shorter than Jake and looked younger, but she carried herself with confidence. "This is Kate Wilson, my assistant," Jake said. "She knows this reactor better than anyone except me." Kate stepped forward and held out her hand. Zixathera was not sure what to do. Her species did not touch strangers. But Kate seemed friendly, so Zixathera touched Kate's hand briefly with one of her own. "Nice to meet you all," Kate said. "We've got all the technical data ready for you to look at. The reactor's been running smooth for about 5 years now." 5 years. Zixathera's spots got even darker. Most galactic standard reactors needed major safety checks every 2 years. The humans had been running theirs for 5 years without following any of the proper procedures. Jake led them through the ship toward the engineering section. The walls were covered with pipes and cables that seemed to go everywhere. Everything looked like it had been built by hand instead of by machines. Other humans they passed waved and smiled at the alien visitors. "So," Jake said as they walked, "what kind of upgrades are we talking about?" Vectar spoke up. "Quantum stabilizers, redundant containment fields, emergency shutdown systems, and radiation shielding that meets galactic standards." "Radiation shielding?" Kate asked. "We've got radiation shielding. According to our scans, your current shielding is only rated for basic cosmic background radiation," Quinara said. "If your reactor had a serious problem, everyone on this ship would die from radiation poisoning in minutes." Jake and Kate looked at each other. Jake shrugged. "Well, we haven't had any serious problems yet, but I guess better safe than sorry, right?" They reached the engineering section and Zixathera stopped walking. The reactor room was much smaller than what galactic safety standards required. The walls were too close to the reactor core. There were not enough emergency exits. The control panels looked like they had been built decades ago. But it was the reactor itself that made her spots turn almost black with worry. The fusion core was running at temperatures that should have melted the containment vessel. The pressure readings were in the red zone on her scanner. The magnetic field that held the plasma was fluctuating in ways that meant disaster was only moments away. This reactor should have exploded years ago, she said quietly. What was that? Jake asked. How is this machine still working? Zixthera asked louder. The containment field is unstable. The pressure is far too high. The temperature readings are beyond dangerous. Jake patted the side of a control panel, like he was petting a friendly animal. Oh, she's a temperamental old girl, but we know how to handle her. I've been working on reactors since I was 16 years old. My dad taught me, and his dad taught him. 16? Vector made a choking sound. Humans begin working with dangerous reactors at 16 years old? Well, I started with the small training reactors first, Jake said. Didn't work on the big ones until I was 18. Kate was pulling up data on a nearby screen. Here are all our maintenance records and safety logs. We check everything twice a day and we've never had a major incident. Zixthera looked at the maintenance records. The humans were doing things that would make any galactic safety inspector quit on the spot. They manually adjusted the containment field while the reactor was running. They performed repairs on systems that were carrying deadly amounts of power. They worked in areas that should have been off limits during operation, yet their safety record was perfect. 0 deaths, 0 serious injuries, 0 major accidents. Your safety margins are completely inadequate, Zixthera told Jake. According to every safety standard used by every species in the galaxy, one minor fluctuation could cause a cascade failure that would destroy this entire ship. Jake just shrugged again. Yeah, I suppose that's true. But like I said, we know what we're doing. Been keeping her running smooth for 5 years now. 5 years without following proper safety procedures, Quinara whispered to Vector. Zixthera decided that the sooner they installed proper safety equipment, the better. These humans were either incredibly lucky or incredibly foolish. Either way, they needed protection from their own dangerous practices. We will begin installation of the quantum stabilizers immediately, she announced. This reactor will be brought up to proper galactic safety standards before we leave. Sounds good to us, Jake said cheerfully. Just let us know if you need anything. Kate and I will stay out of your way while you work. As the alien engineers began unpacking their equipment, none of them knew that the Aurora's dream was scheduled to enter the Vorthon Nebula in just 2 days. The nebula was filled with exotic particles that could interfere with any electronic system. It was exactly the kind of dangerous environment where having proper safety equipment would mean the difference between life and death, or so they thought. 2 days later, the Aurora's dream was ready to enter the Vorthon Nebula. The alien engineers had worked without stopping to install their safety equipment. Quantum stabilizers now surrounded the reactor core. New emergency shutdown systems had been connected to every major component. Radiation shielding had been upgraded to meet galactic standards. Zixthera felt satisfied with their work. Her purple spots had returned to their normal light color. The human reactor was finally safe according to every rule and regulation she knew. All systems are now operating within acceptable parameters, she reported to Jake and Kate. Your reactor will automatically shut down if any dangerous conditions are detected. Jake nodded and smiled, but he looked a little worried. What happens if we need to keep the reactor running even when conditions get dangerous? That would never be necessary, Vector said with confidence. The safety systems will protect you from any possible threat. Kate was looking at readings on her screen. Jake, we're about to enter the nebula. Should I activate the new systems? Go ahead, Jake said. Let's see how our new safety equipment handles the Vorthon. The Aurora's dream moved slowly into the swirling red and orange gases of the nebula. From the outside, it looked beautiful, like a painting made of colored smoke and starlight. But inside those pretty clouds were particles that could damage electronic equipment and energy fields that could tear a ship apart. Immediately, Warning lights began flashing on the alien-installed control panels. The quantum stabilizers started, making high-pitched whining sounds as they tried to cope with the strange energy signatures coming from the nebula. "What is happening?" Quinara asked, her 6 arms moving quickly over her control station. "The exotic particles in the nebula are interfering with our equipment," Vector reported. His long neck stretched as he leaned over his scanner. "The quantum stabilizers are having trouble maintaining proper field alignment." On the main engineering display, red warning messages appeared faster than anyone could read them. The carefully installed safety systems were being overwhelmed by conditions they had never been designed to handle. "The quantum matrix is becoming unstable," Vector announced, his voice getting higher with panic. "The safety protocols are beginning emergency shutdown procedures." Jake was already moving toward the manual control station. "We can't shut down. In here, the nebula's magnetic fields will rip us apart without the reactor's electromagnetic shielding." "But the containment field is showing dangerous fluctuations," Zixthara protested. "The new stabilizers cannot compensate for these exotic energy readings." Kate ran to another control panel. "Jake, the containment field strength is dropping. The quantum stabilizers are actually making things worse. They're fighting against the nebula's natural energy patterns." Jake's hands moved over the manual controls with practiced speed. Zixthara watched in horror as he began turning off the safety systems they had just installed. "You cannot remove the quantum stabilizers while the reactor is operating," she said, urgently. "That violates every safety protocol in the Galactic Handbook." "Sometimes you have to break the rules to stay alive," Jake replied. Sweat was forming on his forehead as he worked. "These stabilizers work great in normal space, but they're not designed for exotic particle environments." Kate was monitoring the reactor's performance as Jake disabled system after system. "The containment field is stabilizing as you remove the quantum interference," she reported. "But we're way outside safe operating parameters now." The alien engineers could only watch as Jake systematically removed every piece of safety equipment they had installed. Each time he shut down another system, their scanners showed the reactor moving further into what should have been catastrophic failure conditions. "This is madness," Quinara whispered. "The reactor core temperature is rising beyond any safe limit. The pressure is increasing to levels that should cause immediate containment failure," Vector added, his scales changing color with fear. But somehow the reactor kept running. As Jake removed each piece of alien safety equipment, the human-designed systems seemed to work better. The reactor had been built to handle conditions that the galactic safety standards said were impossible. "How are your people still alive?" Zixthara asked Kate. "According to every law of physics we know, this reactor should have destroyed your ship years ago." Kate glanced at her with a small smile. "Different worlds, different physics, I guess. Earth taught us to build things tough. Then the worst possible thing happened. A massive wave of exotic particles hit the ship, much stronger than anything they had experienced so far. Even with Jake's manual adjustments, the reactor systems began to overload. Cascade failure beginning," Kate announced, her voice steady, despite the danger. "Containment field collapse in 30 seconds. Jake's hands flew over the controls, but there were too many systems failing at once. "I can't compensate for this much interference. The exotic particles are overwhelming everything." The reactor core began to pulse with dangerous energy. The containment field flickered like a candle in the wind. Warning sirens filled the air with their urgent sound. "Everyone needs to evacuate now," Jake shouted over the noise. "This whole section is going to go." The alien engineers ran toward the emergency exits, their protective suits automatically activating force fields around them. But Jake and Kate stayed at their stations, still trying to prevent the disaster. "Jake, we have to go," Kate called out. "There's nothing more we can do." "Just a few more seconds," Jake replied, his fingers dancing over the manual controls. "If I can just reroute power through the backup systems." But it was too late. The exotic particle wave had caused too much damage. The reactor core lost containment, and the cascade failure began. Zixthara reached the observation window just as the explosion started. The reactor core released all its energy at once in a brilliant flash of light that hurt to look at even, through protective filters. Superheated plasma erupted from the containment vessel, filling the entire engineering section with temperatures hot enough to melt steel. The radiation detectors went crazy, showing levels that would kill most life. Forms in seconds. The heat was so intense that metal bulkheads began to glow red. Emergency force fields activated to contain the blast, but the energy readings were off the scale. No biological entity can survive exposure to those conditions, Vector said, his voice shaking with shock. The radiation levels alone would cause immediate cellular breakdown in any known species. Through the thick observation window, they could see nothing but swirling plasma and deadly energy. The entire engineering section was filled with destruction that should have vaporized everything inside. The temperature readings are showing over 10,000 degrees, Quinara reported. That is hot enough to turn any organic matter into basic atoms. Zixathera felt her spots turning black with grief. Jake and Kate had seemed like nice people, even if they were dangerously reckless with their reactor. They had died trying to save their ship and crew. The emergency containment systems worked for several minutes to control the explosion. Slowly, the plasma cooled, and the radiation levels began to drop. Automated fire suppression systems filled the engineering section with foam to absorb the remaining heat. When the smoke finally cleared and the emergency lights stopped flashing, the alien engineers could see into the engineering section again. The reactor was completely destroyed. The walls were blackened and melted. Equipment that had been there minutes before was now twisted metal and scattered debris. But there, standing in the middle of the destruction, was Jake Murphy. His uniform was burned and torn. His hair was singed and smoking slightly. There were dark marks on his face from the explosion, but he was alive, moving around, and already examining the damaged equipment. "This is impossible," Zixathera whispered. Jake looked up at the observation window and waved at them. Then he activated his communication device. "Engineering to bridge." His voice came through the speakers. "We've had a little problem down here, but I think I can get backup power running in about 10 minutes. The alien engineers stared at him in complete silence. Everything they knew about physics, biology, and safety said that Jake Murphy should be dead. Instead, he was planning to fix the ship. For several minutes, the alien engineers could only stare through the observation window. Their minds could not process what they were seeing. Jake Murphy was moving around the destroyed engineering section like nothing unusual had happened. "Run the sensor readings again," Zixathera ordered Vector. "There must be an error in our equipment." Vector checked his instruments 3 times. Each time, the results were the same. The radiation levels during the explosion were 14 times the lethal dose for most galactic species. The temperature reached 12,000 degrees. The plasma exposure lasted for 47 seconds. "And he survived all of that?" Quinara asked. Her 6 arms were shaking as she looked at her own scanner readings. "According to our instruments, he was standing less than 3 meters from the reactor core when it exploded," Vector confirmed. "He should have been vaporized instantly." Through the window, they watched Jake examine a piece of twisted metal. He picked it up, looked at it closely, then tossed it aside. His movements were normal, like someone cleaning up after a minor accident instead of a deadly explosion. Jake's voice came through the communication system again. "Kate, are you okay up there? I saw you made it to the emergency shelter before things got exciting down here." Kate's voice answered from somewhere else on the ship. "I'm fine, Jake. What about you?" "The medical sensors went crazy during the blast. They were showing readings that don't make sense." "Just a little warm in here," Jake replied casually. "Going to need a new uniform, though. This one's got some holes in it." Zixathera looked at her team. "We need to get down there and examine him. There must be some explanation for this. Is it safe?" Quinara asked. "Our instruments still show dangerous radiation levels in that section." "The levels are dropping quickly," Vector reported. "They should be safe for short exposure in another few minutes." But Jake was already working, in conditions that should still be deadly. He had opened an access panel and was looking at the circuits inside. The radiation that was still dangerous for the aliens seemed to have no effect on him at all. "Look at what he is doing," Zixathera said. He is working with electrical systems while standing in a contaminated area. The radiation should be causing immediate damage to his nervous system. Jake pulled some cables out of the damaged panel and started connecting them in a different pattern. His hands moved steadily, showing no signs of radiation poisoning or heat damage. "Bridge, this is engineering," Jake called out. "I've got emergency power restored to decks 4 through 7, working on main power now." Captain Lisa Grant's voice came through the speakers from the ship's bridge. "Good work, Jake. How bad is the damage down there?" "Well, we're going to need a new reactor," Jake said with a laugh. "This one's pretty much scrap metal now. But I can keep us running on backup power until we reach the next starbase." "What about injuries?" the captain asked. "Medical is standing by." "No injuries," Jake replied. "Just some singed clothing and hurt pride. I should have seen that cascade. Failure coming." The alien engineers looked at each other in amazement. Jake was talking about the explosion like it was a minor inconvenience. He was already planning how to fix the ship and continue their mission. "We have to go down there," Zixthera decided. "I need to understand how this is possible." They put on their heaviest radiation protection suits and made their way to the damaged engineering section. The door was warped from the heat, but it still opened. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burned metal and melted plastic. Jake looked up when they entered. His face was dirty with soot, and there were small burns on his hands, but he was smiling. "Hey there. Sorry about the mess, things got a little out of hand." Zixthera approached him carefully, her scanner running continuously. "Jake Murphy, you were exposed to lethal levels of radiation and heat. How are you still alive?" Jake wiped his hands on what was left of his uniform. "Alive? I feel fine. A little tired maybe, but that always happens after working with high-energy systems." "The explosion should have killed you instantly," Vectar said. "The conditions you survived are beyond what any known biology can handle." "Well, I'm still here," Jake said with a shrug. "Murphys are hard to kill. My family has been working with dangerous equipment for generations." Quinera was scanning the area around where Jake had been standing during the explosion. The blast pattern shows he was at the center of the destruction. The metal walls melted around him, but he remained unharmed. Kate's voice came through, Jake's communication device. "Jake, medical wants to run some tests on you when you're finished down there." "Sure thing," Jake replied. "But I'm really okay. Just need a shower and some clean clothes." Zixthera studied her scanner readings. Jake's body temperature was slightly elevated, but not dangerously so. His heart rate was normal. There were signs of radiation exposure, but at levels that should only cause mild symptoms. "Your cellular structure shows damage from radiation," she told him, "but not enough to explain your survival. It is as if your body is naturally resistant to conditions that would destroy other life forms." "Maybe Earth people are just tougher than most," Jake suggested. He was connecting cables to reroute power around the damaged systems. "We grew up on a pretty rough planet." "How rough?" Vectar asked. Jake thought for a moment while he worked. "Well, the background radiation on Earth is about 50 times higher than what most inhabited planets have. We get solar flares that can knock out electronics. Volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes. Ice ages every few thousand years. Oh, and we had a few nuclear wars in our early history." "Nuclear wars?" Quinara's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, but that was a long time ago," Jake said. "Most people survived those. We're pretty good at adapting to bad situations." Zixthera felt her spots turning dark again, but this time it was not from worry. It was from a growing understanding that was almost too frightening to accept. "Your species evolved in conditions that we would consider deadly," she said slowly. "High radiation, extreme temperatures, constant environmental threats." "I guess so," Jake replied. "Never really thought about it that way. It's just home to us." He finished connecting the power cables and activated a control panel. Lights came on throughout the section and the ventilation system started working again. "There we go," Jake said with satisfaction. "That should keep us running until we can get proper repairs." The medical officer, Dr. Amanda Fox, arrived just as Jake was finishing his work. She was carrying a medical scanner and looked concerned. "Jake, I need to check you over," she said. The readings from the explosion were off. The charts. I'm fine, Amanda, Jake replied. Just a little radiation exposure. Nothing worse than I got working on the solar collectors last month. Dr. Fox ran her scanner over Jake while the alien engineers watched. The device beeped and displayed information that made her frown. Elevated radiation levels, but within acceptable limits, she announced. Some minor cellular damage, but nothing that won't heal naturally. You'll want to take some anti-radiation medication tonight, but you should be completely fine by tomorrow. See? Jake said to the aliens. Nothing to worry about. But Zixthara was beginning to understand that there was everything to worry about. Not because Jake was in danger, but because her entire understanding of what was possible for living beings had just been destroyed along with the reactor. These humans were not just lucky or skilled with their dangerous technology. They were something far more frightening than that. They were a species that had evolved beyond the normal limits of biology itself. Dr. Amanda Fox put away her medical scanner and looked at the alien engineers. She could see the confusion and fear in their faces. Even though they belonged to different species, their body language was easy to read. You've never worked with humans before, have you? She asked gently. Zixthara's purple spots were almost black now. We have read about your species, but this is our first direct contact. What we have witnessed today challenges everything we know about biology and physics. Amanda nodded with understanding. Let me guess. You're wondering how Jake survived something that should have killed him instantly. The explosion exposed him to radiation levels that would destroy the cellular structure of any known life form, Vectar said. The heat was sufficient to melt metal. The plasma exposure should have caused immediate molecular breakdown. And yet he stands here apparently unharmed, Quinara added. It violates every biological principle we have studied. Amanda looked at Jake, who was still working on the power systems. Jake, come over here for a minute. I think our alien friends need to understand something about humans. Jake walked over, wiping his hands on a piece of cloth he had found. What's up, Doc? They want to know how you survived the reactor explosion, Amanda explained. I think it's time for a little lesson about Earth biology. Jake scratched his head, leaving a streak of soot in his hair. I don't know what to tell them. I just did what anyone would do. Tried to fix the problem and keep the ship running. Anyone human, maybe, Amanda said with a smile. But not anyone from a normal planet. She turned to face the alien engineers. You see, Earth is what galactic scientists call a death world. Most planets that support life are much gentler than our home. Death world? Zixthara asked. A planet where the conditions are so harsh that most galactic species would die within hours of arriving, Amanda explained. Earth has background radiation levels that are 50 to 100 times higher than most inhabited worlds. Vectar's long neck curved as he leaned forward with interest. That explains the radiation resistance, but not the heat tolerance. Our ancestors evolved near active volcanic regions, Jake said. My great-great-grandmother actually lived in a city that was built on top of an active volcano. The geothermal vents provided power for the whole settlement. Active volcanoes? Quinara's 6 arms moved nervously. How is that possible? Amanda pulled out a small device and projected a holographic image of Earth. This is our home planet. See these red areas? Those are active volcanic zones. About 60% of human settlements are located within 50 kilometers of active geological activity. The hologram showed a world that looked beautiful from space, with blue oceans and white clouds. But as Amanda zoomed in, the alien engineers could see chains of volcanoes, vast deserts, and storm systems that covered entire continents. The yellow areas are deserts where the temperature regularly reaches 60 degrees, Amanda continued. The blue areas are polar regions where it drops to minus 40 degrees. The green zones experience both extremes during seasonal changes. And humans live in all of these areas? Vectar asked in amazement. Every single one, Jake replied proudly. My cousin Dave lives in the Sahara Desert. My uncle Pete works at a research station in Antarctica. My sister Mary is a geologist who studies active volcanoes. Amanda changed the holographic display to show Earth's history. Our species survived multiple ice ages, where temperatures dropped so low that most of the planet was covered in ice for thousands of years. Ice ages, Zixthera whispered. Periods when the global temperature dropped by 15 to 20 degrees for extended periods, Amanda explained. Most life forms went extinct, but humans adapted and survived. Jake nodded. My grandfather used to tell stories about the solar flare crisis of 2157. The sun went through an active period and bombarded Earth with radiation for 3 years, knocked out most of our electronics, and made the background radiation even higher than normal. What happened to your people during this crisis? Quinara asked. We adapted, Jake said simply. Built better shielding, developed radiation-resistant crops, learned to work with higher energy levels. It made us tougher. Amanda added more information to the holographic display. Human history includes survival through nuclear wars, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and pandemic diseases that killed billions. Billions? Vectar's voice cracked with shock. Each event made the survivors stronger, Amanda continued. Natural selection favored humans who could survive extreme radiation, temperature variations, toxic environments, and high-energy situations. Jake was looking at the hologram thoughtfully. You know, I never really thought about how different Earth is from other planets. It's just normal to us. Normal? Zixthera repeated slowly. Your normal includes conditions that would be classified as emergency disasters on any other inhabited world. Amanda nodded. That's exactly right. What you witnessed today wasn't Jake being unusually tough or lucky. This is normal human capability. She ran her medical scanner over Jake again and showed the results to the aliens. Look at these cellular structures. Human cells have multiple backup systems for DNA repair. Our metabolism can shift to emergency mode during radiation exposure. Our nervous system can continue functioning at temperatures that would shut down other biological systems. The reactor explosion created conditions similar to what humans call a minor industrial accident, Jake added. I've been in worse situations working on solar power stations during solar storms. Worse situations? Quinara asked faintly. Solar storms can create radiation levels and electromagnetic pulses that make reactor explosions look gentle, Amanda explained. Jake has probably been exposed to higher energy levels just doing routine maintenance on Earth-based systems. Vectar was studying his own scanner readings. According to our instruments, the radiation levels that Jake considers normal would require us to wear our heaviest protective suits for short-term exposure, and the temperature ranges that humans consider comfortable would be classified as extreme environmental hazards, Quinara added. Jake laughed. You should visit Earth sometime. We've got some really nice vacation spots. There's this great resort in Death Valley where you can experience 120-degree temperatures while watching geysers shoot boiling water into the air. That sounds like a description of hell, Vectar muttered. Nah, hell is working in the engine room of a cargo ship during a solar storm, Jake replied cheerfully. Now that gets toasty. Amanda continued her explanation. Human children grow up playing in conditions that would require environmental suits on other worlds. Our athletes compete in temperature and radiation levels that would be considered torture for most species. My nephew plays sports on Mercury, Jake added. The solar radiation there is intense, but the low gravity makes for some amazing games. Sports on Mercury, Zixthera repeated in a daze. Of course they do. Amanda put away the holographic projector. So when you ask how Jake survived the reactor explosion, the answer is simple. He's human. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us for millions of years, and we got very, very good at not dying. Jake was already turning back to his work. Speaking of not dying, I should get these backup systems stabilized before we hit any more exotic particles. The alien engineers watched him return to work among equipment that was still showing dangerous energy readings. He moved with casual confidence through conditions that would terrify most galactic citizens. There is something else, Zixthera said quietly to Amanda. If humans are this resilient, why do you use such primitive safety systems? Why not build equipment that matches your capabilities? Amanda smiled. Who says our equipment is primitive? Maybe the galactic safety standards are just designed for much more fragile species than humans. The implications of that statement hit the alien engineers like a physical blow. Everything they had assumed about human technology being crude and dangerous was based on safety standards for species that were far more vulnerable than humans. The humans were not being reckless with their reactor design. They had built it to human specifications for human operators in human conditions. To them, it was perfectly safe. That evening, Zixithara sat alone in her quarters aboard the Aurora's Dream. Her 4 hands trembled as she tried to write her resignation letter to the Centauri Engineering Guild. She had been an engineer for 300 years, but she had never encountered anything that challenged her understanding of the universe so completely. The letter was difficult to write. How could she explain that humans made every safety rule meaningless? How could she tell her superiors that an entire species had evolved beyond the need for protection from conditions that would kill everyone else? Personal log, Chief Engineer Zixithara. She spoke to her recording device. I can no longer in good conscience oversee safety protocols for a species that considers reactor explosions to be routine maintenance incidents. She paused, trying to find the right words. Through her window, she could see Jake Murphy walking down the corridor. He was wearing a clean uniform and looked completely normal. If she had not witnessed the explosion herself, she would never have believed he had been exposed to lethal radiation just hours before. Their engineering practices violate every safety standard we have established over 10,000 years of spacefaring civilization, she continued. Yet somehow these practices work perfectly for them. In the next room, she could hear Vector packing his belongings. He had already submitted transfer requests to work on anything that did not involve humans. The stress of watching Jake survive the impossible had caused his scales to turn a sickly gray color. I cannot serve as their engineer, Vector had told her earlier. Every time I look at their reactor designs, I see death waiting to happen, but death never comes for them. It makes me question everything I know about physics. Quinara had been even more affected by the experience. She had locked herself in her quarters and was refusing to eat. Her rocky skin had developed stress, cracks that would take weeks to heal. She kept muttering about humans who played sports on planets with deadly radiation. The problem is not that they are dangerous. Zixithara continued her recording. The problem is that they have redefined what is possible. Jake Murphy did not survive that explosion through luck or superior technology. He survived it because humans have evolved beyond our understanding of biological limitations. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called out. Jake Murphy entered, carrying a tray with food and what looked like tea. Dr. Fox thought you might be hungry. She said you hadn't eaten anything since the explosion. Zixithara looked at the food. It smelled good, but she was not sure her stomach could handle eating right now. That is very kind, but I am not feeling well. Jake set the tray down on her desk and sat in a chair across from her. I heard you and your team are planning to leave at the next station. Did we do something wrong? No, Zixithara said quickly. You did nothing wrong. That is exactly the problem. Jake looked confused. I don't understand. Zixithara struggled to explain. Jake Murphy, in my 3 centuries of engineering, I have learned that the universe has many impossible things. But until today, I never thought I would meet people who make the impossible look routine. We're really not that special, Jake said modestly. We just do what we have to do to keep the ship running. That is what frightens me, Zixithara replied. You consider surviving a reactor explosion to be just doing your job. You treat deadly radiation like a minor inconvenience. Your species has evolved beyond the need for safety itself. Jake was quiet for a moment. I guess I can see how that would be scary for people from other worlds. We never really thought about how different we are. Your reactor operates at temperatures and pressures that should cause immediate destruction, Zixithara explained. Yet, you have been running it safely for 5 years. The safety equipment we installed actually made it more dangerous because it was designed for normal species, not for humans. Yeah, those quantum stabilizers really didn't like the nebula environment, Jake agreed. Our old systems were built to handle weird conditions. Sometimes simple is better than fancy. Zixithara felt her spots turning dark again. Simple. You call technology that operates beyond galactic safety limits simple. Well, it is simple to us, Jake said. My dad taught me how to build reactors using tools and materials that were lying around our workshop. Most human engineers learn the same way, working with whatever we have available. Your father taught you to build fusion reactors in a workshop? Zixathara asked weakly. Sure. Started with small ones for heating the house and powering our equipment. Worked our way up to the big ones for ships and cities. It's kind of a family tradition. Zixathara realized that human children were learning to build devices that would be considered advanced technology by galactic standards. They were playing with energy sources that required teams of specialists and years of training for other species to operate safely. Jake, what would happen if your people decided to build weapons instead of peaceful technology? She asked. Jake looked uncomfortable. We try not to think about that. Humans have a pretty bad history with weapons. We learned a long time ago that we're better off building things that help people instead of hurt them. But you could build them? Zixathara pressed. If you wanted to. I suppose so, Jake admitted. But why would we want to? There's so much interesting stuff to build that actually makes life better. The casual way he dismissed the possibility of building devastating weapons made Zixathara even more nervous. Humans were not aggressive because they chose not to be, not because they lacked the capability. Captain Lisa Grant's voice came through the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We'll be docking at Starbase 47 in 6 hours. Anyone who needs to disembark should prepare their belongings. Jake stood up. Well, I should let you get back to your packing. Thanks for all the help with the reactor. Upgrades. Even though they didn't work out, we learned a lot. After he left, Zixathara returned to her resignation letter. She had to make the engineering guild understand what they were dealing with. Humans do not need our safety standards because they have evolved beyond the need for safety, she dictated. They are not reckless or primitive. They are a species that has survived conditions that would destroy entire civilizations. Their technology appears crude to us because it is built for beings who can survive anything. She paused to collect her thoughts. I recommend that all future interactions with humans be handled by specialists who understand that normal engineering principles do not apply to them. They should be classified as a post-biological species that has transcended the normal limits of organic life. The next morning, the Aurora's Dream docked at Starbase 47. The alien engineering team gathered their equipment and prepared to leave. Jake and Kate came to see them off. Sorry things didn't work out better, Kate said. Maybe next time we can find safety equipment that's compatible with human systems. There will be no next time for us, Vector replied. We are requesting assignments that do not involve Deathworld species. Jake looked sad. I hope we didn't scare you too badly. We really are friendly people. We just happen to be hard to kill. That is exactly what scares us, Quinara whispered. As they walked toward their transport ship, Zixathara turned back to look at Jake one more time. He was already discussing plans for rebuilding the reactor with Kate. They were talking about improvements that would make it run even hotter and more efficiently. The galaxy is going to have to adapt, Zixathara told her team. Humans are not going away and they are not going to change. We are the ones who need to learn new ways of thinking. 6 months later, the incident report filed by the Centauri. Engineering Guild had become required reading at the Galactic Safety Council. It was not used as an example of what to avoid, but as a warning about underestimating the species from the third planet of the Sol system. The report's conclusion was simple but disturbing. Humans do not just break the rules of galactic civilization. They have evolved so far beyond those rules that the rules simply do not apply to them. New protocols were established for working with human technology. Special training programs were created for engineers who would be assigned to human ships. And somewhere in the files of the Galactic Council, a new classification was created. Post-survival species. Approach with extreme caution. Jake Murphy never knew about any of this. He was too busy building an even better reactor for the Aurora's Dream, one that would run cooler and more efficiently than the old one. To him, it was just another day of solving interesting engineering problems. After all, that's what humans did best.